Hello everyone, Moritz Katzner here. I'm only going to be here briefly to provide some context, and then Ross will be back again. Stop Killing Games was launched shortly before Christmas last year when I flew over to meet with Jonah Goldman, who is now leading the US section of Stop Killing Games. Around the same time, work began on the California bill, the POG Act. SKG has been directly involved in that effort, working with Assemblymember Chris Ward's office in the California State Assembly. The paper you're about to see was not made public by the ESA outside of the California State Assembly. And quite frankly, we believe that that is because they know how weak their arguments are. They know gamers are going to call them out for repeating the same tired talking points about keeping servers online forever. At the same time, they reached out to ABC News to spread random out of context lines about how expensive this is all supposedly going to be. We believe the public has the right to see this. This is a public consultation, so the public should be part of it and not just the Assembly members and the lobby. The final committee vote is this Thursday. This is when we will find out whether this bill moves forward to a vote in front of all Assembly members or whether it is dead in the water for this year. And we will need to try again next year. Luckily, we already received a commitment from Assemblymember Ward's team that, if necessary, they are ready to continue this fight against the ESA next year with more time and more resources to prepare. Either way, this is a win for us. If it doesn't not go through this year, we will have far more time to prepare than we have now. And if it does go through, we will deal with the next stage when it reaches the Assembly floor. And if the bill passes the committee, we will be pushing every single Assembly member to vote aye once the floor vote arrives.
Hello! I've been asked to give some analysis, so let's talk about the first draft of the bill. What the draft version said was that publishers disabling games or microtransactions would need to do one of the following. Modify the game so customers can continue playing it without further support from them, provide instructions for how the customer can repair their game, essentially, give compensation to the customer in some form upon request, and even that had some flexibility. It could be a refund, but it also might be store credit or an equivalent game. Finally, subscription games and games that are completely free with no monetization will be exempt. Now, I know some people are worried this would turn all games into subscriptions. That takes too long to explain now, but that's not going to happen. Maybe that can be covered another time. The short version is that would cost publishers way more than simply creating end-of-life plans. Anyway, legislation like this would absolutely be a step in the right direction, but its impact will be relatively soft since it gives publishers so many options to comply. Now let's compare this to what the current form of the bill is. Ignore the strikeout text. This is off the official California legislature site, so we're getting the raw form here. You're welcome to read this yourself. I'm not going to go over everything, just the key parts. I'm happy with most of the language here. I don't really care about the 60-day notification part. I mean, it's a good practice, but that's hardly the sticking point for us. Here's the part that matters. Alright, the way I read this, 2A and 2B mostly sound like the same thing to me. Or rather, I don't know what scenario 2B covers that 2A doesn't. That is not a complaint. As long as we get to the end goal, I have zero problems with redundancy. And 2C is straight up saying if they can't provide a working game, then they need to provide a full refund. And here it says subscription games are exempt, which is what, 12 games on the market nowadays? Something like that. Completely free games are exempt, and games that don't depend on the publisher in the first place are exempt, which I would have thought goes without saying, but again, it's not a problem saying it. So the main changes I'm seeing are we lost repair instructions as an option, alternatives to a full refund, and only having to compensate customers that complain. Otherwise, yeah, it's pretty much all here. So this bill actually hardened in the process. It didn't get weaker. Well, that's not a problem for me or the Stop Killing Games movement. Good enough. It's important to emphasize we don't get to write the final law. Lawmakers do. We can only focus on the fundamentals and hope for the best as details change, and that's really on display here. But so far, so good. And wouldn't you know it, our old friends at the Entertainment Software Association have released a statement about this bill. Now, a quick history lesson, the ESA has a reputation when it comes to preservation and basic consumer rights. Like in 2015, they made a statement summarized on how abandoned games cannot be preserved, even from museums and archives, because all hacking is illegal and letting people continue to play the games they paid for will destroy the video games industry. And in 2018, they also released a paper talking about this with lots of interesting arguments, like how because sometimes companies re-release games, that means people who bought completely different games should not be allowed to take actions to get them working if publishers disabled them. Oh, and my favorite, claiming the industry preserves games themselves and do not routinely discard works that they paid millions of dollars to create. I feel like if that was true, a whole lot of things, like this bill for instance, wouldn't be happening right now. But flash forward to 2024, the Video Game History Foundation was seeking a copyright exemption for researchers to access video games remotely from legal archives where they are no longer commercially available. And our good friends at the ESA made a statement to the Copyright Office saying how they would never support remote game access for research purposes under any conditions. So yes, I'm sure we're going to get honest, well-reasoned, and considerate opinions from them on this California bill. Let's see what they have to say. Okay, they want the committee to vote no. What a surprise! Because this will risk harming consumers. Well, that's interesting. Okay, before we go further, let's not forget the practice we're trying to stop is publishers selling copies of games to customers, then disabling them without telling them when, and then keeping their money. So they're saying trying to rein in that behavior could harm consumers. You mean more than taking away their purchases and money? What else is left? As for the video game ecosystem, this bill is in response to enormous damage actively being done to it. The business practice it's addressing has led to the destruction of more games than anything else. It's causing the industry to cannibalize itself. The remedy is much lower impact than doing nothing. Some of you may remember in the past there was a big debate about how allowing customers to refund their games would harm the industry. But the impact ended up being so small it's trivial. I think the legislation here is similar. AB 1921 is fundamentally flawed. The bill is based on a false premise that customers own digital games with permanent access. That is not how software works. Games are licensed, not sold as unrestricted property. Okay, it took me a moment to process what they're doing here. This part packs in so much misinformation into just a few words. Let me show you what they're doing. Okay, I do like how they put own in quotations as though they're mocking the concept, but let's look at the bill. It mentions ownership exactly once, and that's in reference to a different bill which specifies customers should not be misled into thinking they have unrestricted ownership. So not only does the bill not say this, but it agrees with this statement. Now, ownership sounds subjective, but let's look at what this bill does. If passed, it would not grant the customer the right to resell the game, redistribute the game, modify it in ways the publisher does not approve of. Does that sound like ownership to you? Not really. What it would do is allow the customer to continue playing the game they paid money for, or be compensated if that's deliberately taken from them. That's it. Legally, that's not the same as ownership. But oh, what's this? The bill specifically addresses games being leased and has an exemption for subscription-based games. That, by definition, is not ownership on any level. So the bill's not written with a misunderstanding. It exactly understands how games are sold and is mandating that customers need basic protections. So this isn't subjective. They made this up. The language in the bill disproves the claim. But then they obfuscate it further talking about permanent access, which is interpretive because there are two definitions in this context, and I don't know which one they mean. One is the customer can use their software indefinitely because they have a copy in their possession. Or two, the publisher must provide access to the software indefinitely. Well, number one is what's being asked for. But what do they say after that? That is not how software works. Okay, if this is the definition they're using, then that's a false assertion. The vast majority of all software ever made operates this way. So, what about definition 2? Well, then that's true, but that's also something the bill is not asking for. So it's irrelevant. So either they're arguing against objective reality, or they're arguing against something the bill is not asking for. I don't know which. Take your pick. Either way, they're making up a false claim, then backing it up with nothing. AB 1921 ignores how games actually work. Video games are dynamic software systems, not static products. Okay, that's also irrelevant since the bill only comes into effect once support ends. The thing about dynamic software is it becomes static once it is no longer updated. So customers should be able to keep that last version or something equivalent. This is just misdirection. Many games rely on online servers and authentication, security and anti-cheat tools, and ongoing updates. When services shut down, functionality can end. This is standard across modern software. No software product is required to remain available to customers indefinitely. Okay, I'll give this one the benefit of the doubt since people can get tripped up on this part. First, these are good examples. Authentication, security, anti-cheat tools, updates. I even made a big list of examples like this in another video. These are all features the bill is not asking for. None of this is necessary for customers to retain their game. These are all support services for a game. When support ends, they are not needed, nor are they expected by customers. If you buy a car with GPS navigation included, if the GPS software ends support, you still get to drive your car. Same concept. When services shut down, functionality can end. This is an unnecessary choice. Sticking with the analogy, a company could design a car to stop working when GPS services go offline, but they would probably get sued to hell and back, and everyone would understand that wasn't really necessary for the car to run. Well, guess what? It's the same for online video games. The only difference is, unlike cars, this behavior has gone unchecked for years. So the industry is trying to assert that this is now normal and necessary. It's not. It's an excuse for depriving the customer, not an innate property of online video games. And this sentence, talking about remaining available to customers indefinitely, goes back to what I just covered. Except this time they're clearly using definition number 2, which, same as before, is not something the bill is asking for. So this is more misdirection. The bill is asking the game remain functional, not support services. Now, in fairness, it may not be easy to detach support services if it was never planned for, but it's certainly possible. Consumers would also expect a car to start even if GPS navigation was down. AB 1921 mandates impossible legal and technical obligations. Games include licensed content like music, athletes, brands with fixed-term rights, not perpetual rights. AB 1921 would force publishers to renegotiate for perpetual rights, often impossible, or alter or remove content in ways that break the game or violate contracts. Okay, we've been over this before in other videos. Games with licensed content like music and brands limit how long the publisher can sell the game, not how long the customer can continue using their purchased copy. There are hundreds of games like this, with brands or label music that are no longer sold, but still playable today. I like to bring up Forza Horizon 4, which has over 100 different car brands, over 100 record label songs, an array of middleware, has been removed from the market because its licenses have expired, but it's still playable by all customers today. And that was way back in 2024. But if you need something more recent, Star Trek Resurgence was removed from sale last month, and the developers said, quote, "Our license to distribute Star Trek Resurgence has come to an end, so the game will no longer be offered for sale. Existing customers can continue to access the game via their Steam library." But what do developers who make games and sign these agreements know? The ESA is literally saying this is impossible. I guess someone forgot to tell the industry what they're doing and have been doing for decades is impossible. And it's the same thing on the technical end. It also requires fixes that are often not technically possible, such as offline versions of online-dependent games and continued support without necessary infrastructure. Okay, this again is based on a false premise, continued support, which for the third time now, the bill is not asking for. The ESA seems to have trouble understanding this. As for not technically possible, yeah, there we go. Then they put in bold how it imposes full refunds regardless of time spent on it. Okay, I didn't want to go here because this video is long enough already, but that's where the ESA wants to take it. Here's a quick chart to show the problem. The ESA is pretending like games targeted by this bill are subscription games. Subscription games tell you when they will end. So if I bought 6 months of access to a subscription game and it shut down after 1 month, yes, I would expect a refund for only 5 months of payment. But the games targeted by this bill do not tell the customer when they will end at the time of purchase. If the ESA only wants partial refunds, then it needs to tell customers when their games will be disabled. Instead, they're trying to have it both ways, where they don't tell the customer how long the game will be available, but retroactively expect time to factor into the cost. Besides, even for games that aren't disabled, if anything, they become more valuable once they're no longer for sale by the publisher. Then they say this is creating new consumer rights by taking away creator rights, and this violates the Copyright Act. Well, the thing is, consumers have no rights on this issue. They don't have the right to retain their purchase, and they don't have the right to be informed when it will be taken from them. This would be straight up illegal in other industries. Now, the idea of video game consumers having rights can be a hard sell sometimes, but I guess the question is, does copyright extend to being able to take away all consumer rights? Based on their statement, I think the ESA would say yes. We're saying no, and some of the terms used in the license agreements are unconscionable and thus need remedies. And hey, let's not forget, if the publisher is so concerned about their copyright that they want to be certain the customer retains absolutely nothing, they're still free to sell their games as subscription services. Just not this in-between twilight state which screws customers. AB 1921 is not a consumer protection bill. I'm starting to think the ESA just likes to argue with people. Moving on. It will reduce access to online features players expect. Okay, well, 1, I doubt that, but 2, more than completely destroying the game? How many features are working with Anthem nowadays? 0? That sounds like less than whatever number they're claiming. AB 1921 will result in fewer games, higher cost, and less innovation. This is just them throwing out claims hoping they'll stick. They're unsubstantiated, I shouldn't even respond to this. But just in case. First, I find the claim of there being fewer games highly questionable, since the market demand for online games would not change if this bill was passed. Also, fewer games depends on how you measure them. Like Concord, which shut down after 14 days. Or Highguard, which shut down after 45 days. Or The Cube Save Us, which shut down after 3 weeks. Those games are gone now, but games that were made with end-of-life plans are still around. I think that proves the less games are run like fly-by-night operations, the more games there will be total. As for increased prices, first off, let's not forget games that don't get destroyed are already exempt. The ESA said it themselves. Video game companies routinely preserve their games themselves. They do not routinely discard works that in many cases they paid millions of dollars to create. So if that is true, then all these companies are already compliant and won't have to spend a dime. So which is it, ESA? I'm getting mixed messages here. But let's pretend the ESA is wrong about something and some companies have to adapt. I would be amazed if an end-of-life plan cost even 1% of the game's budget if planned for from the start. Also, I like how they're saying this in the midst of Bank of America saying last week that standard game prices need to be raised to $80. I think the ESA is looking in the wrong direction if they're concerned about game prices rising. As for innovation, I'd like to point out that marketing studies showing PC gamers are spending 92% of their gaming time on games older than 2 years and 2/3 on games older than 6 years. That might suggest a reduction of innovation. It also means erosion of consumer confidence. Maybe when big companies are killing games weeks after they launch, that makes buying habits more guarded. If anything, this bill might encourage more sales of new games, since customers will feel safer taking a chance on something new if they feel like it won't be taken out of their hands a month or 2 after they buy it. What this statement really means is things that are already happening will continue happening. And yes, I think the bill will be comparatively low impact for the industry and will not change its fundamentals. So that's the ESA's statement on the California bill, and they've certainly lived up to their reputation. It's funny how the discourse online for the Stop Killing Games movement can sometimes be focused on the tiniest details. Meanwhile, the opposition is just mischaracterizing, if not outright fabricating, what the basics are about. Oh well, I guess we'll find out how effective that is. See ya!